Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 3 episodes for you this morning here on the 18th day of January 2017. Happy Wednesday to everybody. This episode has 4 articles in it. The URLs are listed in the description of the video for your convenience. The first one here is off of NewYorkTimes.com, and it says, Chelsea Manning to be released early as Obama sentence. President Obama on Tuesday commuted all but 4 months of the remaining prison sentence of Chelsea Manning, the Army intelligence analyst convicted of a 2010 leak that revealed American military and diplomatic activities across the world, disrupted Mr. Obama's administration, and brought global prominence to WikiLeaks, the recipient of those disclosures. The decision by Mr. Obama recused Ms. Manning, who twice tried to kill herself last year, from uncertain future as a transgender woman incarcerated at the men's military prison at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. She has been jailed for nearly 7 years, and her 35-year sentence was by far the longest punishment ever imposed in the United States for a leak conviction. At the same time that Mr. Obama commuted the sentence of Ms. Manning, a low-ranking enlisted soldier at the time of her leaks, he also pardoned James E. Cartwright, the retired Marine general and former vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who pled guilty to lying about his conversations with reporters to FBI agents investigating a leak of classified information about cyber attacks on Iran's nuclear program. The 2 acts of clemency were a remarkable final step for a president whose administration carried out an unprecedented criminal crackdown on leaks of government secrets. Depending on how they are counted, the Obama administration has prosecuted either 9 or 10 such cases, more than were charged under all previous presidencies combined. In addition, Mr. Obama on Tuesday commuted the sentence of Oscar Lopez Rivera, who was part of a Puerto Rican nationalist group that carried out a string of bombings in the late 1970s and early 1980s. The other members of that group had long since been freed. Mr. Obama also granted 63 other pardons and 207 other computations, mostly for drug offenders. Under the terms of the computation announced by the White House on Tuesday, Ms. Manning is set to be freed on May the 17th of this year rather than in 2045. A senior administration official said the 120-day delay was part of a standard transition period for computations to time served and was designed to allow for such steps as finding a place for Ms. Manning to live after her release. The computation also relieved the Defense Department of the difficult responsibility of Ms. Manning's incarceration as she pushes for treatment for her gender dysphoria, including sex reassignment surgery that the military has no experience providing. But the move was sharply criticized by several prominent Republicans, including the chairman of the House and Senate Armed Services Committees, Representative Mac Thornberry of Texas, and Senator John McCain of Arizona, who called her leaks espionage and said they put American troops and the country at risk. Speaker Paul D. Ryan called it outrageous. President Obama now leaves in place a dangerous precedent that those who compromise our national security won't be held accountable for their crimes, he said in a statement. But in a joint statement, Nancy Hollander and Vince Ward, 2 lawyers who have been representing Ms. Manning in appealing her conviction and sentence, and who filed a computation application, praised the decision. Ms. Manning is the longest-serving whistleblower in the history of the United States, they said. Her 35-year sentence for disclosing information that served the public interest and never caused harm to the United States was always excessive, and we're delighted that justice is being served in the form of this computation. In recent days, the White House had signaled that Mr. Obama was seriously considering granting Ms. Manning's computation application, in contrast to a pardon application submitted on behalf of the other large-scale leaker in the era, Edward J. Snowden, the former intelligence contractor who disclosed archives of top-secret surveillance files and is living as a fugitive in Russia. Asked about the two clemency applications on Friday, the White House spokesman Josh Earnest discussed the pretty stark difference between Ms. Manning's case for mercy and Mr. Snowden's. While their offenses were similar, he said, there were some important differences. Chelsea Manning is somebody who went through the military criminal justice process, was exposed to due process, was found guilty, was sentenced for her crimes, and she acknowledged wrongdoing, he said. Mr. Snowden fled into the arms of an adversary and has sought refuge in a country that most recently made a concerted effort to undermine confidence in our democracy. Mr. Earnest also noted that while the documents Ms. Manning provided to WikiLeaks were damaging to national security, the ones Mr. Snowden disclosed were far more serious and far more dangerous. None of the documents Ms. Manning disclosed were classified above the merely secret level. Ms. Manning was still known as Bradley Manning when she deployed with her unit to Iraq in late 2009. There, she worked as a low-level intelligence analyst, helping her unit assess insurgent activity in the area it was patrolling, a role that gave her access to a classified computer network. She copied hundreds of thousands of military incident logs from Afghanistan and Iraq war, which, among other things, exposed abuses of detainees by Iraqi military officers working with American forces and showed that civilian deaths in Iraq war were probably much higher than the official estimates. The file she copied also included about 250,000 diplomatic cables from American embassies showing sensitive deals and conversations, dossiers detailing intelligent assessments of Guantanamo detainees held without trial, and a video of an American helicopter attack in Baghdad in which 2 Rutgers journalists were killed, among others. She decided to make all these files public, as she wrote at the time, in the hope that they would incite worldwide discussion, debates, and reforms. WikiLeaks disclosed them, working with traditional news organizations, including the New York Times, bringing notoriety to the group and its founder, Julian Assange. The disclosure set off a frantic scramble as Obama administration officials sought to minimize any potential harm, including getting to safety some foreigners in dangerous countries who were identified as having helped American troops or diplomats. Prosecutors, however, presented no evidence that anyone had been killed because of the leaks. At her court-martial, Ms. Manning confessed in detail to her actions and apologized, saying she had not intended to put anyone at risk and noting that she had been dealing with a lot of issues at the time she made her decisions. Testimony showed that she had been in a mental and emotional crisis as she came to grips, amid the stress of war zone, with the fact that she was not merely gay but had gender dysphoria. She had been behaving erratically, including angry outbursts and lapsing into catatonia mid-sentence. At one point, she had emailed a photograph of herself in a woman's wig to her supervisor. Prosecutors said that because the secret material was made available for publication on the internet, anyone, including Al-Qaeda, could read it. And they accused Ms. Manning of treason, charging her with multiple counts under the Espionage Act, as well as with aiding the enemy, a potential capital offense, although they said they would not seek her execution. Ms. Manning confessed and pled guilty to a lesser version of those charges without any deal to cap her sentence. But prosecutors pressed forward with a trial and won convictions on the more serious versions of those charges. A military judge acquitted her of aiding the enemy. In her computation application, Ms. Manning said she had not imagined that she would be sentenced to the extreme term of 35 years, a term for which there was no historical precedent. There have been only a handful of leaked cases, and most sentences are 1 to 3 years. After her sentencing, Ms. Manning announced that she was transgender and changed her name to Chelsea. The military, under pressure from a lawsuit filed on her behalf by Chase Stratejo, American Civil Liberties Union, has permitted her to partly transition to a life as a woman, including giving her cross-sex hormones and letting her wear women's undergarments and light cosmetics. But it has not let her grow her hair longer than male military standards, citing security risks, and Ms. Manning said she had yet to be permitted to see a surgeon about the possibility of sex reassignment surgery. Until recently, the military discharged transgender soldiers. In June, Secretary of Defense Ashton B. Carter changed that policy and said the military would instead provide treatment for them, eventually including such surgery if doctors said it was necessary. President-elect Donald J. Trump mocked that change as excessively politically correct, raising the possibility that he will rescind it. But even if he does, Ms. Manning will soon no longer be subject to the military's control. Here you have that article. The next one is off of the Conservative Tribune. It says Rand Paul tweets picture of page of Obamacare Replacement Act, saying over and over again how the Republicans shouldn't repeal Obamacare without a plan. Not only that, they keep insisting that there is no replacement plan. Unfortunately for them, Senator Rand Paul just smacked them down hard with one simple tweet. On Saturday, the Kentucky Republican and one-time presidential candidate tweeted a picture of the first page of his draft replacement for the Affordable Health Care Act. And there is a picture of that here in this article if you want to take a look at it. It says a bill to repeal provisions of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act and provide private health insurance reform and for other purposes, be it enacted by the Senate, House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled. Section 1, short title, this act may be cited as the Obamacare Replacement Act. Section 2, table of contents. Table of contents for this act are as followed. 1, short title. 2 is the table of contents. And it says Title 1, repeals. Section 101, repeal of individual and employer mandates. And his tweet says, coming this week, the Obamacare replacement bill, done drafting the bill and will be discussing on CNN Sunday a.m. and all week next week. Republican to vote against the budget that would repeal Obamacare, but not because of its repeal of President Obama's signature piece of legislation. Fox News reported that he voted against it because he felt the deficit that the budget ran was too high. The budget still passed 51-48 in the Senate and scored 227 to 198 passage vote in the House of Representatives. And there's video in this if you care to pull that up and watch that. The article continues. It says House Speaker Paul Ryan said the budget gives us the tools we need for a step-by-step approach to fix these problems and put Americans back in control of their health care. According to UPI, Paul said that his plan will give access to most amounts of people at the least amount of cost. Forms that we will do is we're going to legalize the sale of inexpensive insurance. An appearance on CNN. That means getting rid of the Obamacare mandates on what you can buy. We're going to help people save through health savings accounts as well as tax credit. To complain, and we've complained. I've been one of those complaining about Obamacare, Paul added. The replacement bill that we put together, our goal is to ensure the most amount of people give access to the most amount of people at least amount of cost. Obamacare, that sounds like music to my ears. It's going to be interesting to see what that has in it. That's what I'm interested in, is what does it have in it. The original Obamacare thing had stuff in it about you had to go to end of life counseling once you hit a certain age, and if you don't have the insurance, then you get fined on your income taxes, and that goes up every year. Just what does this have in it? What kind of control is the government going to put on us? The next article that I have here is off of policeone.com, and it says, police, alleged cop killer Markeith Loyd has been captured. Loyd has been in the focus of a week-long manhunt since Master Sergeant Deborah Clayton was killed in a Walmart parking lot. Orlando, Florida. Suspect in the fatal shooting of an Orlando police officer was captured Tuesday after a week-long manhunt, authorities said. The Orlando Police Department tweeted Tuesday night that 41-year-old Markeith Loyd was in custody, ending a manhunt that began with the January 9th fatal shooting of Lieutenant Deborah Clayton outside a Walmart store. Television station showed Loyd had a bloodied face when a half a dozen officers and deputies took him into police headquarters. Orlando Police Chief John Mina tweeted, "Capture and wearing Lieutenant Deborah Clayton's handcuffs." Before Clayton's shooting, authorities had sought Loyd for questioning in the killing of his pregnant ex-girlfriend last month. Clayton was tipped off that Loyd was in the area. She approached him in the parking lot, and he fired multiple shots at her. Clayton returned fire but didn't hit him. She was wearing body armor but was hit multiple times, Orlando Police Chief John Mina said. A deputy then spotted Loyd fleeing in a vehicle and pursued him into a nearby apartment complex where the suspect fired again, striking the deputy's SUV twice but missing the deputy, the sheriff's office said. Loyd then carjacked another vehicle and fled, abandoning the second vehicle nearby another apartment complex, which was the focus of the manhunt initially, the sheriff's office said. The second law enforcement officer, Orange County Sheriff Deputy First Class Norman Lewis, was killed in a motorcycle crash after joining the massive manhunt. Hundreds of officers and deputies have been searching for Loyd, and a $100,000 reward was being offered for information that led to his arrest. The service had added Loyd to the list of the most wanted fugitives Tuesday and added $25,000 to the reward offer. Clayton, age 42, was a committed officer and a hero who gave her life to the community she loved, her chief said. She was married and had a college-age son. She also grew up in the Orlando area and enjoyed mentoring young people. She was always the first to step up and help kids, the chief said. A 17-year veteran of the force, Clayton supervised patrol division in the neighborhood where she was shot and previously worked in investigations and as a school resource officer, Deputy Chief Orlando Rowland said. She made a point, even outside her working hours, to do things for youth and do things for the community, Rowland said. And there's more video, and there's some tweets if you want to take a look at all of that. The final article in this episode is off of the Conservative Tribune, and it says they did it. It's bill to defund the United Nations. Senator Ted Cruz teamed up Thursday with, of all people, Senator Lindsey Graham to introduce a resolution to defund the United Nations unless it reverses a recently passed measure condemning Israeli settlement activity. 22% of the money to fund the UN comes from the American taxpayer, Graham noted during a joint interview with his fellow senators that morning on MSNBC. I don't think it's a good investment for the American taxpayer to give money to an organization that condemns the only democracy in the Middle East. The only way to get their attention, we can give speeches, we can pass resolutions, and the UN is going to ignore what we say. But if you cut off their money, that gets their attention, Cruz added. And I think we've real prospects of seeing this thing move through Congress and actually turning this thing around. And you can see their comments in a video clip in this. I'll pull that up and take a look at it. It says, according to the Washington Examiner, though Graham and Cruz launched the bill together, it was ultimately the brainchild of the Texas senator who reportedly came up with it shortly after the December vote by the UN. And there's more video if you want to take a look at it. And it says, the beef that Graham and Cruz, as well as other conservatives, had with UN was that the resolution it passed on December the 23rd had declared Israeli settlements in the East Jerusalem and West Bank illegal. The goal was to force the UN to reverse this decision by cutting off its funding. Fox News the same morning, Cruz added, what brings us together today is an issue that I think really unites. It unites Republicans, unites Democrats. It does unite Americans, and that's standing with Israel. Video. It says the plan made sense as much for the UN funding came from the United States, as noted 2 years ago by Fox News. Each year, the United States gives approximately $8 billion in mandatory payments and voluntary contributions to the United Nations and its affiliated organizations. If that seems like a lot, it is. In other words, were the U.S. to cut funding to the international body, its effect would be sharply felt. So that's all I have for you in this episode. There'll be 2 more episodes this morning. If you like what we're doing, give it a thumbs up. Share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. Don't forget to subscribe. And click that little bell beside that subscribe button and check the box, and you'll get email messages every time I put a show up. And that way you'll stay informed. We'll see you in the next episode.